Girls, has a landlord ever asked you for other payments? I was 22 and looking for my first apartment after college. My budget was tight, maybe $600 a month tops. I found this place on Craigslist that seemed perfect. 1 bedroom, decent neighborhood, $550 a month. The landlord's name was Gary. He was probably in his 50s, kind of gave me weird vibes during the showing, but I ignored it. The apartment was clean and I needed a place fast. When I went to sign the lease, Gary sat down across from me at his kitchen table. He slid the papers over and said, "So the rent is $550, but we can make a different arrangement if you want." I asked what he meant. He leaned back in his chair and goes, "Well, you're a pretty girl. Maybe instead of $550, you pay $300 and help me out with some other things." My stomach dropped. I knew exactly what he was implying. I grabbed my purse and stood up to leave. He quickly said, Wait, I think you misunderstood me." I asked what else he could possibly mean. He goes, "I need help managing my properties. I own 4 buildings. If you do some work for me, cleaning vacant units, showing apartments, stuff like that, I'll reduce your rent." I sat back down slowly. That actually made sense. I asked how many hours we were talking about. He said maybe 10 hours a month. We'd keep track of everything, all above board. I agreed and signed the lease. The first month was fine. I cleaned out an apartment after someone moved out. Took me about 6 hours. Gary paid me $150 cash, and I paid him $400 rent. Second month, he asked me to show an apartment to a couple. Easy enough, took an hour, but then he texted me at like 9 p.m. asking if I could come fix a leaky faucet in one of his units. "I'm not a plumber," I told him. He said, "Just tighten it with a wrench, super simple." I went over there and it wasn't simple. Water was spraying everywhere. I had to call an actual plumber. Gary got mad at me for the plumber bill. Third month is when things got strange. He asked me to come to his house to help him organize rental documents. When I got there, he offered me wine. I said, "No thanks, let's just get this done." He kept trying to make small talk, asking about my dating life, if I had a boyfriend. I gave short answers and focused on the paperwork. Then he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You know, you could pay even less rent if you were nicer to me." I moved his hand off and asked what that meant. He backed off and said, "Never mind, forget I said anything." I finished organizing the files and left. That night I couldn't sleep. I knew I needed to get out of there. The problem was I'd signed a year lease and couldn't afford to break it. I called my older sister the next morning. She's a paralegal and knows about this stuff. I explained everything to her. She told me to document every single interaction with Gary, save all texts, write down dates and times of everything. I started keeping a notebook, every weird comment, every inappropriate text. I wrote it all down. 2 weeks later, Gary texted me at midnight saying, "You awake? Come over." I didn't respond. The next day, he knocked on my door asking why I ignored him. I said I was asleep and it was inappropriate to text that late. He said, "I own this building. I can text whenever I want." That's when I knew I had to act. I called a tenant rights hotline my sister found. The lawyer I spoke to said Gary's behavior constituted harassment and I had grounds to break my lease without penalty. They sent Gary a formal letter. Within a week, he agreed to let me out of the lease immediately with no fees. He even returned my full security deposit. I moved in with my sister for a month until I found a new place. The new landlord is a property management company. Everything's professional, everything's in writing, and nobody asks me to come over at midnight. I reported Gary to the local housing authority. Turns out 3 other women had filed complaints about him over the years. Last I heard, he lost his rental license and had to sell 2 of his buildings. I'm just glad I trusted my gut and got out when I did.